Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. So today we're looking at Global War 1936, and we're going to look at an expansion set today, and we'll get into that in a second. Now, in the rules of, in the original rules in V2, the British and the French could have something called Colonial Infantry. And then in V3 that was expanded to the Italians as well. Basically what it meant was that you could build infantry units outside of your home territory in your originally controlled territories, as long as you had a number value to them, right? And so what you would do is you would just put an infantry unit on, and that would cost you 4 IPPs instead of 3 IPPs. So for the privilege of placing them where there wasn't a factory, it would cost you that extra IPP, right? So recently, Doug put out some Colonial infantry chips, and so you could use these as well. You don't have to though, but you know, it kind of makes it a little bit neater. So you put your infantry on a Colonial chip. That way you can track it better, right? Like I like to do that. I like to know where my stuff came from, right? That's why I have different sculpts in India for the FEC than I do for the British. I just like to see where the guys came from. To me, that just seems interesting, right? Now, you could do this, or you could do this, or you could just do this, or you could be like General Hand Grenade, who's a bit of a nutball when it comes to pieces and markers and everything. And so I've got the marker set for the British, and so there's my Colonial infantry for the global war game for the British, right? And of course there's also the French and the Italians as well. Anyway, the next generation is this set right here, the Colonial Troops rules, and I really like this one because it's got what I like, which is kicked up units, right? Like these guys here, the Colonial infantry, they were just infantry that you could build in the colonies, right? Whereas the units that you're going to get in this set here, and when I say units, I mean chips. You'll use your own units if you use any at all. I mean, you could just use the chips, right? But I think a lot of people like me prefer to put something on the chip. But these ones here have something unique about each unit, right? There's just something about them. And so we're going to get into this right after this. Okay, so in the Colonial rules in the game, you're not allowed to place more than 2 Colonial infantry per turn, right? And so these are going to be included in those rules. So you would not be able to place more than 2 of these in a turn, or 1 of these and 1 regular Colonial infantry. Those are the ones I showed you earlier, right? Just your regular attack 2, defense 4, cost 4 infantry. And so if you're placing 1 of these, then you can only place 1 of those other ones, right? And you have to follow the rules of placement for them. But the rules of placement for these are really quite specific. There's only 1 unit that you get. There's 19 different units here. Only 1 of them that you get that can either go either here or there. The rest of them have to go in a specific territory. And there's only 1 unit that it has 2 of the same type of unit, and so you could have 2 of those on the board at a time. But with these other units, you can only have 1 at a time. And I think most of them, if that unit is eliminated, then you can rebuild it. You know, like if this guy is lost in Nigeria, then you could rebuild that guy in Nigeria the next turn if you choose, right? So let's get to this one. This is the Royal West African Frontier Force. And they've got a backstory, they've got a write-up on each one, but I'm not going to go through them all because, like I said, there's actually 18 of them because the one has 2 sculpts or 2 units. So I'm not going to go through all 18 of them. I'll just tell you what the unit does. So this one is, you build it in Nigeria. It's just a regular infantry. It attacks at 2, it defends at 4, it moves 1. So the two things about this unit that are different than a regular unit is Number one, it only costs 2 IPP, so that's pretty good. You're getting a regular infantry here, built in Nigeria without a factory or anything, and he is going to be only 2 IPP. And the other thing is, that guy already starts on the board. So the game starts and you already have that one if you're playing this set, right? So there you go. He starts on the board and it only costs 2 to replace him if he's lost. The next one is the Arab Legion. Here, let me just move my papers out of the way here. So this is the Arab Legion over here. And he's a militia unit. So you can see that I've painted the base on him yellow here. That's just to help so that I don't have to keep looking at my book, right? Looking at my rules when I'm playing the game. A militia chip is yellow, and so I painted the base yellow because he's a militia unit. And so he's, and I like this guy here. He's got the towel over his head there because he's in the desert, right? He's the Arab Legion. So anyway, he you built him right there in Transjordan, and he attacks at 2 and defends at 2. So regular type militia. Move 1, cost 2. So again, regular militia. But the special ability is that he's not subject to desert rules of movement and combat. So movement wouldn't have mattered anyway because he could only move 1 space. Desert rules for movement are that your units can only move 1. So if you had a tank that normally moves 2, he's only going to move 1 in the desert, right? Anyway, this guy, his movement is still 1, but he's also not subject to desert rules for combat. Normally your ground units are -1 when they're attacking in the desert. This guy is not -1. So he actually attacks better than an infantry would, you know, like a regular infantry. And a regular infantry in the desert would attack at 1. This guy's going to attack at 2, so that's kind of a neat little thing for that militia unit there, right? And let's see what's next here. Okay, here, let me just pause that and we'll go to the next one. Okay, so our next unit for Britain, and by the way, UK has the most on the board because they had the most colonies around the world back in the 1930s and 40s, right? The British Empire was the dominant empire going into the 20th century, and by the end of the 20th century, I mean, there was a Commonwealth, but it wasn't like the empire that they had back, you know, when this war started, right? So of course Britain's going to have the most units in this set. Anyway, so the next guy is this guy here in Tanganyika. It's in this space here. Okay, so he's just a regular infantry, like you see his base there is just the regular British color, right? He's called the King's African Rifles, and so just a regular infantry, move 1, but he only costs 2. This guy, so there you go. You're going to get him for 1 IPP cheaper, and you know, like if you were building Colonial infantry, that's actually 2 IPP cheaper. Now, normally you would need, here, let me just move this over a little bit. Normally you would need a red number on your territory to build Colonial infantry, but there's a couple of places you'll see with these that you can build that Colonial infantry there anyway. It just happens to be the territory, has nothing to do with the number on it. So his special ability is that if this territory is conquered, so let's say the Italian comes down here and takes this dude out, right? Well, then this guy becomes a partisan. And that's if you're using the partisan expansion. And even if you're not, I mean, you could just use the partisan rules just for this set, you know? Like I think there's a couple of these units that you would replace with a partisan if it's conquered. So anyway, you could just put a partisan on and follow the partisan rules. And if you're playing the partisan with the partisan rules, then there you go. There's an extra partisan for you, right? So anyway, there's that guy. And then up here, we have a cavalry unit in British Somaliland. So this guy right here. This cavalry, you're probably wondering where I got that from. It is, it's just a wrist cavalry piece. And it's actually not even a real wrist cavalry piece. I got it on Amazon, and it was a replacement part piece. So they had cannons and and cavalry and infantry, which were smaller than these infantry. Like they weren't 172, they were actually smaller than that. And but these, like you look at them and the hat on them is obviously not appropriate for World War II. I just like them because of the size. But I can tell you right now that Doug is working on a cavalry piece that is about this size right here. I don't know exactly what size it is, but this size here, if you look at, here, where's my infantry guy here? If you look here, so there's the cavalry, there's the infantry. They're basically going to be about the same size, the cavalry and the infantry piece that he's putting out. So that's going to be nice. And I haven't seen it. He hasn't showed me the model yet. But anyway, I already had these. I'd ordered these months ago, right? And I haven't played this game for a while. And you've seen like my cavalry in the World War I game is 172 cavalry, which is actually quite big. Anyway, so that guy there, he's a cavalry piece. He attacks at 3, defends at 2. He moves 2. He costs 2, so that's cheaper than cavalry, right? I think 1 IPP cheaper. But then his special ability, if he becomes a mechanized infantry, he becomes a mechanized infantry after 1 round of defending. After this happens, the unit defends at 4. So, you know, when I was looking at this, and I like to glue my units onto the chips, I thought, well, geez, maybe this unit I can't glue on. But, you know, the thing is, I think that I am going to do that. So I've glued the piece on here. Now, if he survives the first round of combat, then you would replace him with a mechanized infantry. And that's a fairly new piece, this mechanized infantry that Doug has in the 3D printed section. This is a British mechanized infantry. And this was one of the, maybe the most widely used mechanized infantry unit in the world. A lot of different armies use that even well after World War II. Geez, what's the name of that? A Bren carrier, I think it's called. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be using for my mechanized infantry. But that infantry there, he's going to defend it too afterwards. And then, you know, like because you've lost the guy, so later on, if you want to rebuild him, like I said, you can rebuild him. If you manage to take back British Somaliland, you can just build him again, right? And then if he defends first round of combat, then you replace him with the mechanized infantry again. But you look at the confluence of cavalry here. You look at that, and there could actually be one more Italian cavalry up here. It's like the Kentucky Derby going on there in East Africa, right? So anyway, here we'll get to the next unit. Okay, so this guy here, he is actually like he's the, what is he? The Sudan Defense Force. So he's a regular infantry unit, but this one particular regular infantry unit actually attacks at 3 and defends at 4. So he is actually a pretty kicked up unit, this guy. And you build him in the Sudan, obviously, because he's the Sudan Defense Force. Movement of 1, cost of 2. So again, it only costs 2 to get a guy that attacks at 3 and defends at 4. That guy's pretty good. And again, not subject to desert rules, movement and combat. Movement doesn't matter because he's only going to move 1 anyway. But combat, he's going to attack at 3, where a regular infantry would only attack at 2. Actually 1, because your combat values are -1. Anyway, we'll get to the next guy. Down here we have the Rhodesian African Rifles. And so they're just a regular infantry unit. Again, attack 2, defend 4. Move 1, cost 2. So again, -1 on the cost. And again, not subject to desert rules of movement and combat. So nothing really remarkable about this guy except for that and the cost. And you know, it's better than paying twice as much and putting regular colonial infantry down, right? So let's move up this way now. We're gonna go to Asia. And let's see here, there we go, Hong Kong. So that guy there is the Hong Kong Volunteer Defense Force. And so he's a militia unit, as you can see, he's got a yellow base. And he attacks at 0 and defends at 3 or 4. We'll get to that in a second. He doesn't move at all, so he stays in Hong Kong, right? He's only going to cost 2. Now it says here, this unit defends at 3 against land attacks, and 4 against amphibious assaults. So you know, that'll be as good as putting an infantry unit on there at half, or yeah, I guess. Well, at half the cost if you were thinking of putting a Colonial infantry there. Otherwise, you'd have to move them there, because really, it's probably not a good idea to be putting a factory on Hong Kong. Basically, what you're doing is just buying Japan a factory, right? And so the next one, and this is the one where you can get 2 units here, and that's these guys here, and they are the British Indian Army, and they're for the FEC, right? Not for the UK this time. And so the last guy was from the FEC as well, right? So there's these guys here, the Indian Army. And now these guys are going to be kicked up as well. So you'll build them there in Maharaji, and you can have both of those on board at the same time. Basically, if you want an easy way of remembering it, just think you're not allowed to put a chip under any of these units. That will make sure that you're not cheating at all. Or if you see your opponent with one of these with a chip under any of these units, tell them that's not allowed, because these ones you do get 2 chips, and they're 2 identical chips for these army guys. So now they're going to attack at 3 and defend at 4. They're going to move 1, cost 2, and again, the special ability is that you can have 2. And as I'm reading through this, I'm thinking to myself, maybe what I should do with these guys that attack at 3 is maybe paint their base, you know, just to differentiate them, so that I would know without looking in the rules that a regular base means he's regular infantry that just attacks at 2. And a red base means he attacks at 3. I'll look at that. Maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. We'll see, right? Anyway, let's get to the next one. Okay, so here we have the Royal Malay Regiment here. And as you can see with the yellow base, he's a militia unit, right? Anyway, remember in Malay there's a fortification as well. Like you can see the fortification printed on the map here. So that makes it even better, right? You'll already have your, I think it starts with a militia in that territory, if I remember correctly. Then you can build this guy as well. Anyway, so he's going to attack at 2 and defend at 3, so he's a good defender, right? He's going to move 1, cost 2. Now, this unit here, his special ability is that after 1 round of defending, then he becomes a regular infantry. So you go and attack that territory, and he's probably still going to have a fortification, so he's going to defend really well. And then after that first round, well, then he starts to defend at 4 instead of only 3, or like a regular militia, only 2, right? So that's pretty good. And also this is a mountain territory, so this guy really does make Malay a much tougher place when you really think about it, right? And then, you know, like again, I pasted them on there, and I don't see somebody wanting to attack that territory unless they know they can take it. So you're probably going to lose that guy eventually. But the thinking is, with his good numbers like that, is that he will hopefully take off more units, right? Anyway, so that's the end of the British units. Okay, so I misspoke there. That's not the end of the British units. I forgot these guys way over in the Far East here in the South Pacific. So first of all, we have the Fiji Infantry Regiment, and he's going to attack at 2 and defend at 4. So that's this guy down here in Fiji, right? He's a regular infantry. So that's a nice unit to be able to put on the board over there. And it doesn't say that he is Anzac, so I just made him into a British, but it doesn't really matter because they all attack and defend together, right? You know, when the Anzac's taking a turn, that guy can just, you know, be a part of that turn. But if you wanted to put a sculpt on, then you could also put an Anzac sculpt on, I think, right? So he's a movement of 1. He only costs 2, so again, you're going to get him cheap. And he does not suffer double casualties on the first round of an amphibious assault. So there you go. Like if you're Anzac, you go pick that guy up. It's like he's a Marine, right? So that's you know, a cheap Marine, a half-price Marine. You can't beat that. Anyway, so there's that guy, and then the other guy here, he's the British Solomon Islands Protectorate Defense Force. That's a mouthful. And you put him in the Solomon Islands, and he's a militia, as you can see by the color of the stand. He doesn't attack, but he defends it too. So basically, he's never going to leave that island, right? I suppose you could take him and put him on a different island if you want. No, actually you can't. He's got a movement of 0. So he stays there. Okay. Is that island worth anything? No. So he might be the last guy that I build, right? Because, you know, like Japan could go take that island, but why, right? It's not worth anything. But anyway, I mean, you could build him, and he only costs 2. And here you go. It says that he starts on the board. So if you're playing with this set, this guy starts on the board. He's just an extra unit down there, who's really not really much part of the play. Anyway, now we'll get to France. Now the French have the second most units on the board for this colonial expansion, and the first one here is the Senegalese Tirailleurs. He's an infantry unit, as you can see here. So there he is right there. And if you're wondering where I got these sculpts from, this I kind of bought these sculpts to use for neutrals, and I thought that it would be good for this too. And that's this Boer infantry, and they're basically African guys, right? They were Afrikaans. They were Dutch, who really, you know, have been in South Africa for a generation or 2 or more, right? Anyway, I just thought that they kind of looked like they could be colonial infantry, right? Or, you know, kind of militia as well. Anyway, so that's what I'm using for these, and you'll see there's a few of them that I use, including the German. And anyway, so these guys here, again, they're one of those kicked up guys. So he's going to attack at 3 and defend at 4, move 1, cost 2. And like the guy earlier, if he's taken out, replace him with a partisan if you're using the partisan expansion, right? So there's that guy. Oops, look at that guy dance. Look at him go! And then Regiments du Chasseurs d'Afrique, and that is in southern Algeria there. So here's the first of their cavalry pieces right here, is this guy right here. And he is built in southern Algeria. He attacks at 3 and defends at 4, so he's going to be a good defender, right? Movement of 2 and a cost of 3. This unit becomes a mechanized infantry after 1 round of defending. I didn't grab a mechanized infantry out of my box, but anyway, again, like the British unit, cavalry unit earlier, you replace him with a French mechanized infantry if he survives the first round of combat, right? There you go. So that's pretty cool. And then you got the Moroccan guy right up top there, and can I catch him there? There we go. So he is he's a mountain infantry. He's going to attack at 2 and defend at 4. He's going to move 1. He's going to cost 3, which is 1 IPP cheaper than a regular mountain infantry. And the really special thing about him, other than the fact that he's mountain infantry, like a mountain infantry is going to be a mountain infantry for the purposes of the game. Like you just follow the rules for mountain infantry. And I'm just using just the regular mountain infantry sculpt that you get at historical board gaming, right? And I painted the base brown to signify that he's mountain infantry. So his special ability, and this is a good one, if you played this game you'll know what I'm saying, is he automatically becomes free French if Paris surrenders. So there you go, like put him in a territory that's worth 1, like Morocco there, and you're not going to lose him, right? You're not going to lose that territory. So that's a really good special ability, in my opinion, anyway. That's you know, France doesn't have many chances to hang on to territory, and so I assume that you get to hang on to that territory. It says you get to keep the unit, so I would assume that you would hang on to that territory as well. Yeah, I don't see anything that says it doesn't, so I think that he would defend his territory, which would really mean if you were to pile more French guys there, you know, how could they be taken out if that guy can't be taken out, right? Like, and his territory can't be taken out. So big advantage with that guy there. He might be the most important of all these units that we've gone through so far. So the next guy is that cavalry piece down in French Somaliland, part of the Kentucky Derby down here, the East African Derby. So he's that French cavalry there, and he is the Compagnies Maharistes Saharians. He attacks at 3, defends at 3, so nothing remarkable about that. Cost 2, move 3. So nothing remarkable about any of that. So his special ability is he is not subject to desert rules of movement and combat. There you go. That's what he does for you there. And if you followed along with my Abyssinia video a while back, there's a guy that could maybe move into Abyssinia, right? To join your forces in there. Anyway, so there's that guy. And then there's also another cavalry unit. He's the Spahi cavalry, and he's in western Algeria. So he's right, where is he? Right there, western Algeria. Now him, he is attack 3, defense 4. So again, a good defender, right? Move 2, cost 3. So those are regular. But his special ability is that he can be built for free after Paris surrenders. So I would assume that you would have needed to hold on to western Algeria, right? And if you did, then you could build him for free after Paris surrenders. So there you go. And then over here, let's go over to Asia. We have this guy down here. And again, he was from the Boer infantry set that I had there. He's a cool looking guy too. Anyway, something funny about this one that I noticed. He's the Cochinchina division. So I thought, oh, you put him in Cochinchina, right? It's just that you put him in Annam Tonkin. So that's a little counterintuitive, but sure, okay. Anyway, he attacks at 2, defends at 4, moves 1, costs 2. So he's a buck cheaper, $2 cheaper if you count him as colonial infantry, right? And he's not subject to jungle rules of movement and combat. So that's kind of handy because he's in jungle here, right? And there's jungle right next door to him as well. So that's pretty handy for that guy there. And so he's pretty valuable as well, right? So let's pause this and then get to the next guy there. Okay, so this unit here is the only American unit on the board. He's the Philippines Commonwealth Army. And you place him in the Philippines, obviously, right? So he attacks at 0 and defends at 4, and he moves 0. So he's not going to move off that island, right? But he's a good defender at 4, and that's pretty regular. His cost is only 2. Basically what it is you're going to be able to build an infantry in the Philippines for only 2 IPP, right? You didn't have to move him over there or anything. He's not going to help you if you have any designs on invading somewhere else with him, but that's pretty cool. And like some of the other units earlier, if you're using the partisan expansion, then you can, if you lose him, then you can place a partisan there. And I'm not going to bother, there's a couple more units like that. I'm not going to bother digging out more partisan units. I know you know what a partisan unit looks like, right? So there's that guy there. He's the only one for the Americans, and then the only one for the Soviets is up here. That's this guy right here. He's the Cossack cavalry. There's nothing really too special about him. He attacks at 3, defends at 2, moves 3, costs 2. So the best thing about him, I guess you could say, is that he costs 1 IPP less, and then his ability as well is that if that territory that he is in is captured, then you replace him with a partisan, right? So that's basically all that's to go with him. Getting back to our East Africa Derby horse race here, we're getting to the leader now. This guy out front. So he's Italian, right? And you build him in Italian Somaliland. So he attacks at 3, defends at 2, moves 2, only costs 2. So he's going to be a cheaper one. But also, this guy is already on the map at the start of the game. So he's a free unit to begin with if you're playing with this expansion. And you know, that's only fair because there's a couple of units from the allies that get to start on the board for free, right? So you're going to get him for free. And then the Royal Corps of Libyan Troops is right here, Tripolitania there. So he's this cavalry. Now this guy here could also be built in Eritrea down here. So that's this cavalry right here, right? This is a different one though. So the one that I'm showing you right now in Tripolitania, he can be built in either place, and he's the only unit in this set that can be built in one of two places, right? And he's going to attack at 3, defend 3, move 2, cost 2, and he may be built in either Tripolitania or Eritrea, as I said. And then the guy next to him there, that's this guy here. He's one of my older units. He's been painted a few times, not as much detail as he used to have. And as you can see, he's got a gray base there. And what does that mean? Well, that means that he is a paratrooper. So you build him in Tripolitania there, and he attacks at 2, defends at 4, he moves 1, he costs 3. But when this unit is built, Italy may place 1 air transport plane in Tripolitania for free. So there you go, right? You get a free air transport. That's a pretty valuable thing to get right there. And it says 2-4, so that would be the best if that's also in an air assault. That would be the best air assault guy on the board, wouldn't he? Getting to defend at 4 like that, dropping him somewhere and in an attack at 2, and then afterwards, if he survives, then he defends at 4. That's pretty valuable as well. That's what I like about these units. Everybody has some kind of value, right? Some kind of a little bit better than the regular stuff, and you know, that's what an expansion set should be, something to enhance your game, right? So then there's that other cavalry unit that I showed you in Eritrea that he's already there, right? So that's the guy that's in the 4th place there in our derby, and he is attacks at 3, defends at 2, moves 2, costs 2. He doesn't suffer a penalty when attacking in a mountain zone or across a mountain border. So that's going to be pretty handy if when you're trying to take out our Abyssinia down there. Like if you build him on the 1st round, and then you'll be able to use him on the 2nd round if Abyssinia survives the 1st round, right? That's pretty handy. And then the last Italian unit there is the only tank on the board. You can see him there, and he gets built in Cyrenaica. He attacks at 6 and defends at 5. He moves 2. He costs 5. I think that's one IPP cheaper than a regular tank, right? Now he's not subject to desert rules of movement and combat. That's a pretty big deal because a tank normally is only going to move 1 in combat, and he's going to attack at 1 less. But also, if you roll a 12 in desert rolls with your vehicle class units, of which armor is a part of, then you have to, then it breaks down. Like basically your machine breaks down and you have to retreat, right? Where this guy's not subject to the rules of movement and combat, that's not going to happen to him. He's just going to be a tank, right? And so he's a tank regardless of whether he's in the desert or not. Anyway, we're going to get to Japan next. So all 3 of your Japanese units have something in common here, and I'll show you what it is. What do they do with that other one? Oh, here it is. Okay, so the first guy there is the mountain infantry that you see in Korea there. So he's going to attack at 3 and defend at 4, so that's a better attack, right? He's going to move 1 and he's going to cost 3, so he's cheaper than a regular mountain infantry, right? Now he's going to have no river penalty when attacking in a mountain zone or across a mountain border. So being a mountain infantry, they're even making him better than a regular mountain infantry and cheaper than a regular mountain infantry. So that's pretty handy for Japan, right? Because lots of mountains in China there, and that's where you want to be attacking, right? So he's going to help you out big time, especially since he's attacking at 3 instead of 2, right? And then we got this guy down here in Burma. I just used a Gurkha skull for him, although he's not a Gurkha, right? But he's a colonial troop from the country of Burma. Now he's going to attack at 2 and defend at 4, so he's a regular infantry. He's going to move 1, he's going to cost 2. Now he's not subject to jungle rules of movement and combat. And that's good because you're building him in the jungle, right? And he's a cheap unit as well. So the Japanese units that you're getting here are going to be pretty handy for what you're doing. Oh, there's one more too, I've almost forgot him. So he's some kind of Mongolian cavalry that has agreed to fight for the Japanese, right? He's the Inner Mongolian Army, and you build him there in Colonial, and he attacks at 3, defends at 3, moves 2, costs 2, so cheaper than regular cavalry. Now his special ability is that he's not subject to mountain rules of movement and combat. So again, you're getting something that is for the Japanese that's going to be handy for the type of terrain that Japan typically fights in. Like, you don't see too many people building tanks for Japan in this game. You know, not like you do in other games perhaps, right? But this game, because of the mountains, right? Mountains are going to slow you down, right? Whereas this guy is not going to be slowed down. He's not going to be -1 when he's attacking, right? And obviously he's going to be yeah, like he's not going to be -1 for combat, right? Anyway, so that's pretty handy. So I think we only have 1 unit left, so rather than pause it, let's just go over there and take a look at him. And he's the only German unit on the board. Again, he is from the Boer set that I have there. Oh, come on now, focus, focus. There we go, there he is. Anyway, he is built in Tunisia. However, as you can see, Tunisia is a French territory. So he attacks at 2, defends at 4, moves 1, costs 2. And his special ability is that he may be built in if Tunisia is controlled by Germany or Italy. So you'd have to take that territory out, right? And then you can build that unit. And let me just see here. So that's kind of cool. And then when you get your rules, let me just show you here. Let me just show you what I was just talking about there. So you look at here in the rules. And let me just zoom this back out again. We don't need it zoomed in anymore. So you see here, like it takes a lot of pages to tell you what I just told you, right? Because they give you the backstory for them, right? But they also give you reference tables for them, so that shortens it a lot. It doesn't give you the backstory, it just tells you what the unit is, what the chip looks like, and what it does, what it attacks and defends and moves, and what its special ability is. So there's pages and pages of these reference tables, right? There's the one that I just had there. There's the Japanese and the German one right there. So anyway, I like this set. I really like it, and I think I'm going to definitely put it into the next game that I play. That's it. That's all I got for you today, everyone. So take care. General Hand Grenade out.